Hello everyone, how are you all? It's about to pour for 3 days here in LA, and so we're buckling up for a bit of rain, which never happens here. So I actually like it, I miss the rain. But anyway, tonight hi Indy, welcome everyone. We are talking about, tonight I go through Q&A, so any questions that I don't answer during the week, like through the stories, when you guys type in questions and I answer them on stories. So anything I don't get to, which is usually a bunch, I will answer on these lives now. And also any questions you have, if you type them in, I like a live interaction. I love it. So I know you guys have a lot of thoughts and opinions, and I would love to hear from you during this live. Don't be shy. And if you have a question, it's likely at least half to a third of everyone listening has that same question or would love to hear the answer to that question. And so if I can help answer it, that would be great. So welcome to everyone. So this week was a big week on divorce. We spoke a lot about divorce and about dating, the stigma that goes along with either dating a divorced person, although we didn't really talk about that so much, but dating even the child of a divorced person. And all the fears that come with that, you know. So it's understandable why there's some fears that go along with that. However, really what I wanted to stress this week around children of divorced parents is that, you know, anything affects us. Obviously, how our parents are affects us. All sorts of things, not just divorce. Divorce is just one thing. And it's legitimate and valid, but you cannot assume that all children of divorced will be divorced, or all children of divorced will have a bad marriage because they didn't see a good marriage. They're all the natural assumptions and conclusions people have. And it's a broken home, so that therefore, you know, I don't want to have a broken home myself, because as I said before, that often if they're the ones that are working on themselves and they're the ones that realize that they don't want the same type of marriage, then they're gems, they're superstars. And we have to get over, I think it's a broader issue of being so scared of things not looking picture perfect, right? Whatever it is. And this goes into a much bigger discussion around mental health, any kind of disability, any kind of disadvantage that you think you may have that is not picture perfect. We judge ourselves and we're so scared of judgment from others, or we feel judgment from others and we judge ourselves, and it just continues. And it is, if I can be like frank and candid, it's just nonsense. It's absolute nonsense, because no one has a perfect world. Like no one has anything that's perfect. And if they do on some level, like if everything was rosy, it's just, firstly, it's highly, highly, highly unusual and unlikely. And secondly, it's just not how God operates. Like God creates adversity and struggle so that we become great through that struggle. That's the point of it. And so what you want to look for is not, did they go through adversity or struggle and now I'm going to judge them, red flag, run away, which is what typically people do because they're scared, right? It's not a red flag if someone was a child of divorced, or if someone was divorced. It's not a red flag. You have to look at how did they respond to it? How did they build themselves because of it? Who did they become as a result of it? Because there are people who have lots and lots of issues. There are people who are scary and you don't want to marry, or they're toxic, or they have a personality disorder that's really untreatable, or, you know, or they're just, you know, not loving. They're not giving. You don't want to be in a relationship with those people. There's lots of people like that. And there's lots of people who, in the face of adversity, really, really worked deep inside themselves and built themselves, and really, really want to choose to be a different person and want to choose to be a better person and a more whole person. And often it's because of the adversity that it creates you to be who you are. And it's because of that adversity that your real spouse, if it's you that's got the adversity, right, it's your spouse will appreciate that about you, will admire it. And hopefully you, if it's not you, if you're looking at someone you're dating who has an adversity or went through some ordeal, you will be inspired and admire what they went through and how they made the best of their life, or how they grew, how they built themselves, how they strengthened internally as a result of that. And that's what we want to look for, is like, how did someone respond? If someone didn't do any therapy or any inner work, I would be nervous, right, with something significant, because I don't think you can just get over it just through thinking about stuff. I think you have to actually process. You have to process internally how things impacted you, what you drew from it, what conclusions you made, and then how you're operating as a result. And so with that in mind, again, I just wanted to put that as a mindset as you're dating. Don't run away from things that may seem not perfect. Look into it and look at what it may mean for the person and how did they respond? How did they build themselves? How did they work through it? What did they learn from? Ask them, what did you learn from that? What did you learn from it? You know, how someone shares about what they learnt from any kind of struggle in their life or challenge, how someone speaks about their family or, you know, who they are when they grew up, and all of that reveals who they are now. Yeah. And so you want to really spend time when you're dating, give it the time it deserves. You're not in a rush. You don't have to rush to get an answer. A lot of the time singles will suddenly want to come up with an answer, as in like, is it the one? Should I continue? Or red flag, I want to run away. And that's coming from fear. That's coming from anxiety of like, I'm so scared to not know. I'm so scared to make a wrong decision. I want to just force a decision. But that forced decision is a wrong decision because you don't have enough information or feedback to make that decision. And so you want to be able to have enough feedback, enough information. Everything you experience when you're dating is feedback. It's information, right? So when there's an issue or you're awkward or you're uncomfortable about something or you weren't okay with something that he said or did or showed you, that's the time to bring it back to him to speak about it and see how he responds to you. That's the most important piece. It's not that something awkward or uncomfortable happened, because that's going to happen. That's going to happen between two people at some point. That's going to happen many, many, many times in marriage. So you want to see, how does he respond? That's what you're looking for. That's real relationship, not this kind of fake, everything's great, I'm great, I'm putting this great impression up, you know, it's fake. And when you do that, by the way, it's really draining. It's really, really draining. That's why people can't stand dating, is because it's draining and they're not themselves when they're on a date and they're looking at their watch under the table. They can't wait to get out of there. I used to have a joke with friends of mine that like, if I text you twice, it's like a lifeline. You have to call me with an emergency, get me out of there. You know, I never really did it, but we had a joke about it, you know, that sometimes I'd escape to the bathroom and text my friends or text a mentor and say, oh, it's not going well, it's so boring, you know, whatever. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to live in that fake world. You want to be real. So how can you make it real? You focus on real things that are going on. You ask real questions. You share how you really feel about something in a nice way, in a respectful way, in a sensitive way. But you want to see, how do they respond? Do they get defensive? If someone gets defensive, they're not even able to have a relationship. I don't know if I shared this, but on date 2, my husband and I had a terrible date. Date 1 was amazing and date 2 was terrible, which is very common apparently. And what happened was we misunderstood each other, and I got triggered and he got triggered about something, like as in like a kind of defensive. And we didn't say anything though. It was one of those awkward car rides home where we were like, yep, thanks for a great night. Yep, thank you. You know, like shut down. And I got in and I was crying, and I was really crying. I was really upset. Obviously I liked him. I never cried after a second date in my life. And I thought it was over, right? Because we had this weird thing. There was weird misunderstanding. And anyway, the next day I thought, you know what, how we deal with this will say a lot. How we deal with this together will reveal how do we deal with stuff. And thank God he was thinking the same thing. So he was thinking, let's see how we deal with this. So I said, listen, I have some thoughts on, he called me the next day or the next afternoon, and I said, I have some thoughts on like what happened last night. I'd love to share it. He said, good, me too. And then he said, I'll call you from the airport. He was flying back. So he called me from the airport, and I said, you know, when you said this, it triggered me in this way. And I got reactive and defensive. And he goes, really? He said, because when you said that triggered me. I said, oh, so we were both like getting triggered and defensive, but we didn't know it. And that's why both of our walls went up. And he goes, yeah. And I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. I said, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean what you thought I meant. And he said, yeah, no, I didn't mean what you thought I meant. I said, oh, okay, great. I said, like, I would still like to really get to know you. And I don't really feel like I know you, but I would like to get to know you. And he said, me too. I said, great. I'll come out to LA next. So that's how it went. And we were both like, we dealt with that pretty well. Like we just explained and we heard each other, and then we just kind of moved on. We didn't make a whole drama out of it. And I was like, yeah, we were both thought that was pretty good. Like it wasn't such a big deal, and it was pretty good for people who don't know each other that well. So that was a good sign in the end. And through processing things like that together, you can actually get closer. It's actually through processing real things that you can get a lot closer. So with that preamble, I'm going to read a couple of divorce questions, and I have a couple of the regular questions. So I dated a guy, it was hard for him to separate from his mom. The mother was divorced. This is about divorced parents. That he takes care of her. He is like the man. This is a flag. I hate to say it. If the son can't separate from the mom, whether the mom's divorced or not, it doesn't matter. Sometimes in very strong cultural families, there's an enmeshment that happens. And Sephardic families, Persian families, different cultures, Bukharian, often there's a very traditional sense of family, like kind of mafiosa, like a mafia a little bit, like family comes first. Family is over the individual, but that's a problem when you're getting married, because when you're getting married, the son needs to move away from the family and become his own man and then cleave to the wife, right? It says that a man needs to leave his parents' house so that he can cleave as one flesh, literally the line in the Torah. Yeah, he needs to leave the parents' house. It doesn't mean physically. Of course he's going to leave physically. It means leave emotionally, psychologically, actualize away from family. We call it individuation in psychobabble terms, or self-actualization. Separate away to be your own individual, to be able to then be one with your wife. And you cannot do both. You can't still be a mommy's boy and listening to everything mommy says and be very like under her wing, so to speak, whilst you're cleaving with your wife. It doesn't work. So any person who still lives at home and who still is under their mother's domain, so to speak, or reign, and listen, closeness is excellent. Because especially because how he treats his mom is how he's going to end up treating his wife. But if he can't put a stake in the sand, so to speak, and say, I'm with my wife now, or I'm with my girlfriend now, or I'm with as you're dating, kind of move that across to be with you as one, it's a problem, because that has to come first. At some point, the nuclear family is the priority, and the both children have to put that nuclear family, that unit now that you're creating together, as priority. And it's a problem. So, you can talk about it with him, and you can share it with him. You can talk about the fact that you can talk about the fact that one second. You can talk about the fact that he is that this is what you would need from him, and what his view is of being a man and being a husband and being a father. Like, what does that look like to him? And is he able to really join and separate away from the family? And not only that, but when he sets a boundary, can he set a boundary with his mother? That's what you really want to look for. Can he set a boundary with his mother? And if she doesn't respect that boundary and he can't set it, and I've seen already, unfortunately, 2 or 3 couples now who had broken engagements because of this exact factor. That when, just literally, I just had another second or third one recently, that if he can't set a boundary with his mother, you're in trouble. It's going to make for a very, very tough marriage, especially if she's controlling, bossy, dominating, etc. And so, yes, if he can't separate from his mom, that's a real problem. Okay. Yeah, so these are more comments. Someone said, I wish this wasn't a thing about divorced parents. I wish it wasn't either. Someone says, it's proven that kids of divorced parents have more issues, but you need to judge each individually. Yes, that's if they're not worked out. If they haven't worked through stuff, they can have more issues because they're dealing with a certain trauma. Okay. Someone says they may be better because of it. Something to look into, but not a red flag. Correct. That's a good outlook. Something to look into, but not a red flag. Okay, so there's not really any more extra questions on divorce. People are just giving comments. I'm going to go to any other questions, comments from you guys on divorce. I'm happy to answer if you want to put it in the chat. And I want to talk about the regular questions now. I'm going to the regular questions. Okay, I'm feeling emotionally drained from dating. Not sure if I'm pushing away the right guy because of it. So when you feel drained, it really means a type of burnout. Yeah, it really means a type of burnout when you feel drained from dating. And when you feel drained from dating, it can be due to a couple of things. Number one, you might just need a break. So take a break for a week or two. Like, just take a break. Don't think about it for a week or two. Just take a full-on break. That's number one. Number two is you could be drained because you're saying yes to everyone. You're saying yes, just saying yes. You never know. No, you know. You don't have to say yes to everyone. You have to be clear on how do you discern, how do you vet, how do you go out with only people in the ballpark. That's what you really want to get to, and not feel guilty and not keep doubting yourself and second guessing. That's really, really important. Yeah, you want to go out with people who are in the ballpark. And if you don't, you get really drained and burned out. So it's not wise to do it, because you need your strength, you need to be present, you need you need to be available, and you need to be able to be intimate, open, authentic, when you date. And you won't do that if the person is not even in the ballpark. So you want to be able to make sure people are in the ballpark. And number 3 is that it could be draining because you're just not being real on the dates. You're trying to put up this facade or this fake image of like, look, everything's great. Look, you're going to like me. Look. Everything's wonderful. I'm good enough. Look, I'm perfect. I'm this, I'm that. Right? Because we always want to put the best impression forward. But if you're doing that for a period of time, it's kind of fake and it is exhausting. It's draining because deep down, you're not that image, and you're kind of hiding your image. Sorry, you're hiding your real self. And the more you put up an image of who you think you should be for someone else, the more draining it is, because you're really trying to guard against the true you, and you're so scared of being found out. It leaves you even more vulnerable because you think you're going to be found out once you have an image and a defense up. And so you want to stop doing that. You want to be able to own your imperfections. You want to be able to accept that you're not perfect. You want to be able to say, like, this is me. And if he's not for you, all it means if someone rejects you, as I've said before, is that he got clarity before you did that you weren't meant to be his wife this lifetime as a role in his life. And it's not a rejection of you as a person. It's a clarity on the role. And when you can look at it that way, it doesn't feel anywhere near as painful, and you don't have to be as scared of it, because every single person will be a no until the yes, the one yes. The one yes, everyone's a no. So people used to say to me when I go out, you never know, this could be the one. Like, what pressure? It's like, no, don't say that to me. That's such pressure. And I'm just meeting this person for the first time. No, go out and say, if it's a no, it's fine. If it's a no, it's fine. And it's only one person that's going to be a yes, So you want to be okay with the no, right? And then it takes the pressure off. I think that that's an important one. Okay. In one of your responses, I mentioned love bombing. What is that? What is love bombing? Love bombing is a classic tactic of narcissists who seduce and bomb you with over-the-top love, flowers, gifts, experiences that don't really feel consistent or congruent with where the relationship's at. So it feels way over the top. Yeah. And it's not just one thing. It'll be numerous things. So it's not just like one thing you have to be wary of. Like, oh my gosh, is that love bombing? You'll know. It'll just keep happening. Like, it'll try and basically what narcissists try to do is they try to become the ideal, perfect image of what they think you want. And generally, when you are dating a narcissist and it feels like that love bombing, basically the feeling is this feels way too good to be true. Like, this feels way too good to be true. And my theory always is, if it feels too good to be true, it usually is. Meaning, not that you should be cynical, but generally it's not real, right? Because nothing is like this perfect image. And so you want to be able to see through that. And I always make my women that I work with say, well, tell me his flaws. Tell me his flaws. Can you live with those flaws, right? So, and if you can't see the flaws and everything's so perfect, there's a problem. There's a real problem here, because you're not seeing accurately, or he's bedazzling you with like smoke and mirrors, and we got to be careful of that, So, I hope that makes sense. So that's love bombing by narcissists, right? They don't fall for it. Don't get seduced. One of the ways you're getting seduced and sort of roped in is if you pedestal someone and you minimize yourself. So if you pedestal someone else and minimize yourself, you've got to be wary of that dynamic. And some women do this naturally, so they don't feel worthy inside, and a narcissist will just hook into that. They'll just hook in and make you feel like $1 million, and then they'll end up turning on you and want you to feed them. So narcissists are about feeding their own image, but this is the way they kind of rope you in. It's like a hunting session, so to speak. And you have to be careful if that's your dynamic, to not minimize yourself, right? When you pedestal someone else, you then by definition minimize yourself, and that's a problem. That's really, really a problem. And so when you minimize yourself, you're basically living in an old wound, an old pattern of like, I'm not worthy. Basically, that's where it's coming from. And that's an old wound in you. That's like an old familiar hole that you fall into. You've probably done it before, or you do it with certain friends, or you do it, in other situations, and you don't want to do that. You want to notice that you're doing that and say, wow, that's interesting that I know. You shouldn't really pedestal anyone. You don't have to pedestal anyone. Respect is different. Okay, you're respecting a very chashuv, important person, fine. But that's not minimizing you. You're just respecting who they are. You should never need to minimize yourself, right? Someone's saying narcissistic love bombing people can be from people pleasing. No, I don't know what that means. I think that's Leah. What do you mean can be from people pleasing? I'm not sure. No, narcissistic love bombing is not generally a people pleaser. They're doing it really strategically to rope you in. And it's, hi, Bennett. Welcome to our space. Bennett's one of my peers, my colleagues. It's very different to a people pleaser. A people pleaser has low self-worth, and out of low self-worth, they want to, and they're scared of conflict, scared of rocking the boat. It's actually a type of control in a different way, people pleasing. I want everyone to be happy because I don't want to rock the boat. Right? I'm scared of that conflict. So I'm going to be what everyone else wants me to be so that, I feel like that it's an even keel. There's peace, right? That's what people pleasing is. I don't want to disappoint someone. A narcissist is not coming from that place. A narcissist is doing it as a tactic, a strategy to rope you in, to be able to control you. Specific. It's much more sort of sinister in a way. Okay. Tips on dating when at different religious levels. Listen, this is tricky. Someone else also said something about how do you how to bring up waiting till marriage, right, to be intimate if a guy doesn't come from an Orthodox background. Same thing at different religious levels. It's generally not advised. It's generally not advised to date with such a gap in religious levels. It's really not advised because the values are so different and it's very hard. Listen, marriage, dating, relationships are hard enough. Men and women are different enough that to bridge the gap, that when you add on different values, different lifestyles, different directions, it's too big a gap usually. Now, are there ever exceptions? Yes, the odd one or two here, but it's just not recommended to do that. Why would someone on a certain religious level want to date someone on a different religious level? It just doesn't make sense because you wouldn't share the vision of what kind of life you want. And so it's not recommended. It's really, for this reason, it's just too hard. I don't really have any good answers for that other than obviously you go with the person who needs, the person who has the most observant levels needs to do that level so they don't feel they're compromising their own values. They don't feel like they're betraying themselves on some level. And the other person who's not as observant needs to respect that. So there needs to be definitely a huge respect there between them. And if there's not, that's a problem too, right, in the relationship. But generally, I feel that it's fraught with danger to do that. And I don't think so. I don't think it's a good idea. The big three on a religious level that you need to be aligned on is kosher, Shabbat, and family purity laws, mikvah. If one wants that and the other doesn't, it's very hard because it really, those three govern the Jewish home, the Jewish lifestyle. And so you really need to be aligned on those, but that's for a different discussion. Okay. How do you know when a divorced man has done the inner work and the learning? So we discussed that a little bit already, which is that you watch how he speaks about marriage, you watch how he speaks about divorce, you watch how you ask him what he learned from it, from the divorce. You ask particularly how he speaks about his ex-wife. It tells a lot, right? It tells a lot. When I was dating my husband and he's divorced, there's a lot of people that knew both of us, right? From before we were in the same industry of Kiruv and Jewish outreach, ironically, and I never really knew of him. And the people on the East Coast didn't even know he was divorced. That's how little he spoke about it. They didn't even know, right? He was just silent, never spoke a bad word like that. And people were shocked. They didn't think of it because they didn't know he was divorced, right? So that told me a lot. That told me a lot about him. And that he just didn't badmouth people. He didn't badmouth her. and didn't badmouth this. Like, he didn't blame. There was no blame. It was like, he shared the story and the journey with me, but that says more about the person, how they describe the situation. If you hear the typical story of like, she was psycho, she was the psycho ex, I'm fine, the ex is the problem, and there's no responsibility, there's no sense of responsibility, that's a problem. Yeah, that makes me go, whoop, little orange flags, right, go up, because that means there's no ownership over their part in the process. And I think that's really important. So that's how you can tell really how much work someone's done, is you have to read between the lines. You have to hear what they're really saying. What are they really saying? Are they just trying to protect their ego and defend themselves? Or are they owning up to some of the dynamic and some of the responsibility, and then sharing with you how they worked through it? That's called real, right? If someone is not owning that, either they're lying to you because they don't want to show you their cracks yet, or they're really in denial to themselves. They're lying to themselves. And that you want to be careful of, because that means they haven't processed anything. Okay. I'm taking a break. Okay. How to actually trust the process and God's plan. It's hard with such bad options and seeing others move on. Okay. This is really what I do, because bad options and seeing others move on are two different types of Yetzer-Haras. A Yetzer-Hara is the voice inside of us that wants to basically spiritually destroy us. So when I look at the fact there's so many bad options out there, right? My pleasure, Susie. When there's so many bad options out there, right? And then I start seeing everyone else move on, and poor me, I'm left behind by myself. Everyone else is moving on and I'm alone. So two different things are happening there. One is that it's not that there's bad options. It's either that you're not vetting enough and you're going out with options that are really not in your ballpark. So you're seeing it as bad options because you're forcing yourself to be out there with dating these people that are not in your ballpark, right? So that means more about you getting clear on your boundaries, saying no, not being scared into saying yes. It's a whole thing about this being forced into saying yes because people are pressuring you. Like, I can't stand it. You don't owe anyone anything, as far as like who you go out with. And it doesn't matter if they think you're too picky or whatever. One of the best things you can say, unfortunately, they should listen to your opinion as it is. But if they don't, and you're so worried about people thinking you're too picky and you're not, that you're not taking things seriously, as you can say, I've discussed it with my mentor, my dating coach, my mentor, my rabbi, my rebbitzin, whoever, and we all agree this is not for me. So then if you have a problem with it, you please feel free to speak to them. Now, they're never going to call them, but at least you feel like you have backup, right? You've gone to your people that you trust and you talk to, and we've discussed it, and this is not for me, rather than it just be like a picky single just deciding. So it's a good thing to use. I used it a lot when I was single, that line, and it worked really, really well. But I would get really angry when people would push me and they were like overstepping. I felt it. I got mad. I'm not mad at them, but I felt it inside, and I just used that energy to set a boundary. So bad options are also a reflection. I call it a mirror moment. And a mirror moment is that some part of my inner world is being reflected in my external world. And if there's no one showing up for me, I have to ask the question, am I showing up for myself? How do I minimize myself? How am I judging myself? How am I finding myself unacceptable? In what ways do I feel I'm unacceptable? Right? That's what we want to ask. Because on some level, it means you're not really showing up with your full self. And when you don't show up with your full self, stuff doesn't flow back to you. Stuff that's aligned doesn't flow back to you. And so if you're really attracting unaligned people, or people who are emotionally unavailable in some way, people who are not on your level, not compatible, right? Not that you're looking down on people, but you're not compatible. You have to ask, am I in alignment myself? Am I in alignment? Where am I out of alignment in myself? How can I show up more fully? I had a colleague in Israel, and he was a great guy, kind of out of the box, very edgy, real leader, and he was dating for a long, long, long time. And only when he shared this with me, only when he went back and got back into cooking, and he was on some famous Israeli chef cooking show, right? He ended up going on to a secular Israeli show and ended up getting through and kind of became a bit mini famous through his cooking. But before that, he kind of left it because men cooking in Israel in the yeshiva world wasn't really a thing. And so he just ignored it, but it was part of what brought out his creativity. And when he went back and owned this hobby, this passion, this interest of his, literally he met his wife, I don't know, like a month later or something. And he, looking back, felt that it was part of reclaiming a part of himself he'd kind of cut off, or he'd just minimized, or he'd ignored. So he wasn't really dating from his full self, his full creativity, or in his full energy, his full self, his full passion. And so it's not just hobbies. That was just his example, but like, which parts of you do you feel are unacceptable or you just like ignore? You know, you don't show up with those. And these questions are really important because it could be that it's a subconscious limiting belief that you've been driven by, that feels that you're less worthy, or that you can't trust yourself, or, you know, you're not listening to yourself, you're not listening to your body, what's going on. A lot of decision making comes from the body, right? Head, heart, gut. And so we want to be able to tune into the heart and tune into the gut. They're different faculties with different wisdoms and different feedback. So one of the tools I teach you when you work with me is how to tune in to the head. Is this logical and practical? To the heart, do I feel like I want a heart connection here? Am I open in my heart? Do I feel like warm and moving towards a draw? And gut, do I feel secure and stable? And so we want to be able to align all those three, head, heart, gut, get a yes from each one of them. And it can be one says yes and one says no and one says yes, and all different combinations of the yes and no. And we want to be able to ask each part of us, like, what would it take to get a yes in this area? What would need to happen for me to get a yes in my heart towards this person? Let's say when you're dating, yeah? And it could be that like it just won't, or it could be that this needs to happen, or I need to see more of this in the person, and then I'm going to feel safe, I'm going to feel open, I'm going to feel... So you need to ask yourself about what do you need on a heart level. And so what happens is that the head often jumps in and takes over and usurps it all the power and the attention, and tries to work it all out, analyze, work it out, give theories, assess. And the head can't assess the heart. They're different faculties, different wisdoms, different places in the body, different needs, different desires, different... And so the head often jumps in and tries to work it all out for everyone, and it just doesn't work. And then you get confused and you can't trust yourself. And so the head can argue every pro and con from every position about any decision. And then you just get confused because you're arguing the pros and the cons, but I have no idea what to do for me. Like, I don't know what to do in myself because my head can argue all the different aspects of it. Right, the head is limited. The head is limited if it's not working in conjunction with the heart and with the gut. Yeah. So you want to be able to bring that to your dating, essentially. Yeah. To work with the heart, to work with the gut. Oh, I went off on a tangent there. I have no idea how I got there, but someone's saying, what do you do when others' lashon hara might be affecting your shidduchim when there is almost no truth to what they are saying, but they are very charismatic? It's such a hard test. That is such a hard test. You know, again, all you can do is stay in your own lane and stay focused on... firstly, I would go to a Rav and ask a Rav what to do, or go to their Rav, ideally, and ask their Rav what to do. So get people involved that can back you up. That's a practical thing. But on a spiritual level, really, you have to put your trust in Hashem. And the more you put your trust in Hashem and say, Hashem, you govern what people think and how people respond. This person doesn't. You're spreading lashon hara, even though lashon hara is damaging, and we've got to make sure not to do it. I put my trust in you, God, that you're going to bring my shidduch, and it's not going to affect that. Yeah, because that's the only thing you can do. I don't think you can do anything. I mean, you can speak to the person who's speaking lashon hara, but it sounds like my gut feeling is they're not going to care. So you'd want to speak to someone who can influence them, ideally. Go to a Rav or someone else who could influence them. And if not, you would just want to be really open about this lashon hara when you're dating someone. So when you're dating someone, if you should ask and be open and say, maybe not the first date, but if it's going to continue, you want to say, I'm just wanting to know if there's anything, you've heard, or ask the shadchan if there's anything they've heard. Like, you want to address it. Don't run away from it and be scared of it and shut down and hide it. That's always worse. Address it. Usually with lashon hara, there's some truth to it, right? As lashon hara means that lashon hara is about true information that might be negative. And so if there is any truth, you said almost no truth. If there's any truth, if you really own that and own it with a sense of acceptance in yourself that either you're working on it or it's, it's something that was in the past and this is how you've worked it through. Again, own the adversity, own the difficulty. Usually other people are impressed with that. Usually other people respect that. Yeah. Or just be like an open book around it. People feel very safe when people are an open book, which is the opposite of what you think. Usually you think, oh my gosh, I've got to hide it. Everyone's like, don't tell, shidduchim, hide it, right? No, that's not trustworthy. I mean, don't go spreading it to the world, but the right person that you're dealing with, you need to be open. You need to be sharing. You need to be at the right time, not all at the first date, obviously, but you need to be able to feel like you own your life. You own your life. My mother was not well a lot of my life, and I felt this pressure a lot. I felt this pressure a lot when I was dating. And I felt the judgment, I felt the pressure. And it wasn't even an issue for my husband. So if someone really has an issue with any of this stuff, they're not your spouse. They're just not. And so you have to be able to also have the strength inside to really believe that, my spouse won't care about this. And if this person cares and I've addressed it, they're not for me. That's all. They're not my husband, they're not my wife in this lifetime. And it really is, it's a level of bitachon. It's really about trust. Trust Hashem. Hashem has your back. Hashem loves you. Maybe you can do some cheshbon and nefesh, some internal searching around. Is there any lashon hara you spoke, right? Is there any lashon hara you spoke or anything you did that you need to reflect on and say sorry for? Someone said, I like your velvet couch. Thank you. I had a crazy thing happen today. I'm going to finish now. I've got to go in 5 minutes. I had a crazy thing happen today. I had someone that I've known for about more than 15 years, like from seminary days. We were chatting on Facebook Messenger about something else. She was asking me a question. And then I gave her a compliment, like she was such a light, in the time I knew her in Israel. And she said, can I share something with you that's stuck with me for the last decade? I haven't spoken to her in a decade. I said, sure. Anyway, she begins to tell me that she remembers a specific moment on a Shabbaton where I was with another person and she felt like we were mocking her. I have no clue what she's talking about. No clue, no recollection, no clue. Vaguely remember going to this event for a Shabbat. No clue what she's talking about. She's carried this for 10 years in her heart. Becky, how are you, Becky? Miss you. Carried for 10 years in her heart this feeling of feeling like judged, mocked, hurt. And real tshuva, by the way, is when you can actually take that back to the person who hurt you and give them the opportunity to clear it up, because there's no way in the world I would have remembered that, and I never would have had the opportunity to clear it. And I really believe those things affect us. I think they can block us from any bracha, any abundance. And I said thank you to her. I said, I have no recollection of this. I am so sorry. I don't know if it was actually happening or if you were just perceiving it's happening, but I'm so sorry that you felt this way and felt that I was doing this. I never felt this about you, or I never thought that about you. I am so, so sorry. And I got the opportunity a decade later to apologize. It's crazy. And, when I know we're not in the high holidays now, but when Yom Kippur rolls around, everyone's like, forgive me, and just puts blanket statements out on social media. It drives me crazy. Because that's the wrong way. The wrong way is not mochel me. The wrong way is if I did anything to upset you, please come to me privately. Let me have the opportunity to do tshuva, right? You can't just mochel everyone else. It has to be something that mochel means forgive. It has to be something that you know that you did and that you apologize for directly. And if someone did something to you that upset you, and you're not letting it go, or you can't let it go, it hurts you too bad, it's on you. You're obligated to go to the person that hurt you and say, I know you probably don't realize it, but this really still hurts me, still sits with me. And I just want to let you know so we can clear the air. That's what she did, basically. She gave me the gift of doing that and let me clear it. And I didn't even know about it. And I think this stuff does affect our dating. I really do. So whenever there's something negative in your life, someone was speaking before about lashon hara, and thinking lashon hara is affecting his shidduchim. You want to be able to do a reflection, a deep reflection in your own life. Cheshbon nefesh, we call it, right? A spiritual accounting. Is there anything I've done similar to this? Whatever I feel I'm being treated as, have I done it to anyone else? And be really honest, not defensive. And when that happens and you can clear it, then you're also clearing yourself as a vessel, right? You're opening yourself as a vessel to be able to receive. And that's really, really important. So whilst we don't manifest, right? I'm on the anti-manifest rant. We don't manifest anything. God manifests everything. But we are an open vessel, and we can block that vessel from receiving those blessings. And we want to make sure that we're open and really open to doing that. And if I could speak to every single one of you, I would on the phone. Please DM me. We'll set up a phone call, how I can help you to really make sure that you're this open vessel, that you can really unblock yourself and receive an amazing blessing. And you have to feel 5 things: worthy of it. You have to be able to trust yourself in the decision making, feel a sense of inner peace so you can date from an authentic place. You have to feel confident navigating the dating system, and you have to have clarity in what you want. And when you have all those 5 things, you can get married fairly easily. And so those 5 things are easily attainable, and I'm happy to help you. If you want to know more, please DM me. Have a great night, guys. Bye.